Oh my God, get that black man out of my car!
Yancey Lawson stood still, calm.
Your engine mount is cracked, ma'am.
Sloane Caldwell's face contorted.
Do you understand what you just said? You idiot!
Yancey walked toward the car.
The rear left mount. A small crack. I can fix it.
You?
Sloane grabbed him by the collar.
Do you think you're smarter than 3 European engineers, you useless cockroach?
Yes, ma'am. Give me 72 hours.
Sloane pushed him away, laughing, sharp, cruel, a plan forming in her head.
All right. Fix my Ferrari, and I'll marry you. Fail, and you'll pay me 10 times the value of the car.
The whole room erupted. Yancey adjusted his collar, smiling.
I agree.
Silence. Immediately. Completely. Within 72 hours, one of them will kneel. And that person will certainly not be the man in the work clothes. Austin, Texas. Glass towers and limestone money. Caldwell Dynamics sat on 12 acres of prime real estate off the Mopac Expressway, a fortress of polished steel, tinted windows, and the kind of silence that only wealth can buy. The company restored rare European supercars and built industrial robotic arms for manufacturing plants across North America. $800 million a year in revenue, 300 employees, and a culture that ran on one unspoken rule: know your place. Sloane Caldwell inherited it all at 28, when her father dropped dead of a heart attack during a board meeting. 3 years later, she ran the company the way she ran everything, with absolute control and zero tolerance for anything that didn't match her image of perfection. Yancey Lawson did not match that image. He arrived on a Monday morning through the service entrance, not because he was told to, because the front desk security guard took one look at him and pointed to the back. No words, just a finger. His title on paper read Level 1 Mechanical Technician. In practice, it meant something else entirely. Clean the parts, sort the bolts, carry the toolboxes for engineers who had half his knowledge and 10 times his salary. He was hired through Austin's Workforce Diversity Initiative, a city program Sloane referred to privately as the Charity Pipeline. He was the only black employee on the engineering floor. Darnell Brooks, a technician who'd survived 18 months by keeping his head down and his mouth shut, met him at the loading dock that first morning. "Keep your eyes low and your voice lower," Darnell said. "That's how you last here." "How long you been lasting?" 18 months. That's the record for people like us. Yancey looked up at the glass atrium. Somewhere on the 3rd floor, Sloane Caldwell's office overlooked everything like a watchtower. "I'm not here to last," Yancey said. "I'm here to work." Darnell shook his head. "Brother, those are the same thing around here. You just don't know it yet." In the center of the main lobby, roped off behind velvet stanchions, sat a 1962 Ferrari 250 GTO, one of only 36 ever built. Rosso Corsa red, chrome wire wheels, and a 3-liter V12 engine that hadn't turned over in 6 months. The car was Sloane's crown jewel, purchased at auction for $52 million, the centerpiece of every company brochure, every investor deck, every magazine profile. Except now, it sat dead, a monument to a problem no one could solve. 6 months earlier, the engine developed an intermittent misfire. Power vanished above 4,500 RPM. A strange, metallic resonance echoed from somewhere deep inside the block. 3 Ferrari-certified specialists flew in from Maranello, Stuttgart, and London. Combined fees, $240,000. Combined results? Nothing. Garrett Nolan, head of engineering, spent the last 4 weeks running his own diagnostics. New spark plugs, new ignition coils, new fuel injectors, timing chain inspection. He chased every electrical ghost he could find. The misfire remained. The car sat in the lobby like an open wound. Every employee walked past it. Every visitor asked about it. And every time someone mentioned it, Sloane's jaw tightened a little more. Yancey walked past it on his first morning. He stopped. Not long, 3 seconds, maybe 4. His eyes swept the engine bay the way a surgeon scans an X-ray. Then he kept walking. He did the same thing the next morning, and the next. Darnell noticed. "Don't even look at that car, man. That car is her heart. You touch it, you touch her, and she will end you." Yancey said nothing, but every morning for 2 weeks straight, he paused at that Ferrari. 3 seconds. 4. His head tilted slightly to the left. His fingers twitched at his side. And then he moved on. Something was pulling at him. Something only he could hear. The first incident happened on day 3. Garrett Nolan called Yancey into the parts warehouse, a windowless concrete room the size of a basketball court, stacked floor to ceiling with metal shelving. 3,000 components. Bolts, gaskets, bearings, brackets, seals, clips, washers. Each one needed to be counted, cataloged, and logged by hand. No computer, no scanner. Paper and pencil. "Should take you about a week," Garrett said, "if you can count that high." Yancey finished in 2 days. Every number accurate, every shelf organized. When Garrett saw the completed inventory, he didn't say thank you. He said, "Do it again. I don't trust your count." Yancey did it again. Same numbers. Perfect match. Garrett stared at the clipboard for a long time. Then he dropped it on the floor and walked out. The second incident happened on day 8. Yancey arrived at the parking lot to find his car gone. A 2006 Honda Civic, rebuilt from a salvage title with his own hands, every bolt tightened by his own fingers. Security told him it had been towed. Doesn't match employee vehicle records. He walked 3 miles to work that day, arrived on time. The next morning, the car was towed again. Same reason, same dead voice from the same security guard. Yancey walked again, 3 miles. Summer heat, Austin concrete baking at 98 degrees. He arrived with sweat soaking through his shirt. Garrett saw him and wrinkled his nose. "Somebody hose down Bay 4. The new charity hire is dripping on my floor." 4 engineers laughed. One of them, a junior tech named Powell, looked away, ashamed but silent. The third incident was the worst. Week 2, Tuesday. Yancey sat in the break room during his 15-minute lunch, reading a technical manual on Ferrari V12 valve train geometry. He'd borrowed it from the company library, one of the few perks even level 1 techs were entitled to. Sloane walked in. She wasn't looking for him. She was passing through, on her way to the executive elevator. But she saw him, saw the book. And something about the image, a black man in stained coveralls reading about Ferrari engines, offended her in a way she couldn't articulate. She crossed the room in 4 steps, pulled the book from his hands. "What is this?" "Technical manual, ma'am. Ferrari V12. I know what it is." She held it between 2 fingers like it was contaminated. "What I don't know is why someone like you thinks he can understand it." She dropped it in the trash can. The metal lid clanged shut. "Stick to what you're good at, mopping." She left. The break room was silent. 3 other employees sat at nearby tables. None of them moved. None of them spoke. Yancey waited until the elevator doors closed. Then he walked to the trash can, reached in, and pulled out the manual. He wiped the coffee grounds off the cover with his sleeve, sat back down, opened to the same page, and kept reading. Darnell found him there 10 minutes later. "Brother, I saw what happened. You gotta let it go." "I am letting it go." "No, you're reading the book she threw away. That's the opposite of letting it go." Yancey turned a page. "The book didn't do anything wrong." Darnell sat down across from him, lowered his voice. 13 diversity hires in the last 3 years. You know how many are still here? You. Just me. Everyone else quit, or got pushed out. They make it so bad, you leave on your own. Then they say you weren't a culture fit. Clean paperwork, dirty hands. I'm not quitting. That's what number 6 said, and number 9, and number 12. Yancey closed the book, looked at Darnell. I'm not them. Something in his voice made Darnell stop arguing. The company cocktail party fell on a Friday evening in late September. 200 guests, investors, clients, automotive collectors, tech executives, open bar, string quartet, and the Ferrari, still dead, still roped off, still sitting in the lobby like an expensive embarrassment. Sloan worked the room in a black dress that cost more than Yancey's annual salary. Vivian Cross trailed behind her, phone in hand, filming everything for Sloan's 8 million Instagram followers. Yancey was there too, not as a guest, as a server. White shirt, black vest, carrying a tray of champagne flutes between clusters of people who looked through him like glass. At 8:47 p.m., a silver-haired investor named Harlan Foster tapped his glass against the Ferrari's fender and said the thing nobody was supposed to say out loud. $52 million and it just sits there? Come on, Sloan. When are you going to get this thing running? Laughter, but not the comfortable kind, the kind that has teeth. Sloan's smile hardened. We're working on it, Harlan. You've been working on it for 6 months. I've seen faster progress from the DMV. More laughter. Sloan's grip on her champagne glass tightened until her knuckles went white. That was the moment Yancey walked past the Ferrari carrying an empty tray, and, as he had every morning for 2 weeks, he paused. 3 seconds. Eyes on the engine bay, head tilted. Vivian spotted him first. Oh my God, Sloan, look, your janitor is checking out your car again. Heads turned. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Sloan had been publicly embarrassed about the car 30 seconds ago, and now the lowest person in her building, the charity hire, the diversity statistic, the man she'd thrown a book at, was standing next to it, looking at it, like he understood something. Every ounce of frustration, embarrassment, and rage found its target. What happened next, 200 people witnessed, and within 24 hours, the entire internet would too. If someone told you that in 72 hours, a mechanic with no degree, no credentials, and no allies would bring a billionaire to her knees, would you believe it? Stay right here. Southside Chicago, 15 years earlier. The house on 63rd Street had 3 bedrooms, 1 working radiator, and a detached garage that smelled like motor oil and history. Yancey Lawson was 13 years old. His mother was serving year 4 of a 7-year sentence at Logan Correctional. His father was a name on a birth certificate, and nothing else. His grandmother, Dorothy Lawson, raised him on Social Security checks and stubbornness. She cooked breakfast at 5:30 every morning, pressed his school shirts with an iron from 1988, and never once let him leave the house without saying the same thing. You are not what they say you are. You hear me? Yes, ma'am. Say it back. I am not what they say I am. Every morning, 5:30, without fail. Behind the house stood the garage, Curtis Lawson's garage. Yancey's grandfather, a Korean War veteran who spent 2 years repairing Jeeps, half-tracks, and diesel generators for the Army's 24th Infantry Regiment. He came home in 1953 with a Bronze Star, a bad knee, and hands that could feel the difference between 1/1000th of an inch. No shop in Chicago would hire a black mechanic in 1954, so Curtis built his own. A single bay in the backyard, word of mouth, $20 a job. He fixed everything, Chevys, Fords, Chryslers, the occasional European oddity that wandered south from the Gold Coast. He never advertised, never needed to. The cars kept coming because the work was perfect. Curtis died when Yancey was 8. Heart attack. Quick and quiet, the way he did everything. But the garage stayed exactly as he left it. Tools hanging on pegboard shadows, a creeper parked under the lift, and 17 spiral notebooks stacked on a wooden shelf above the workbench. Yancey found them at 13. The notebooks were filled with Curtis's handwriting. Tight, precise, mechanical. Diagrams of valve trains, timing sequences, compression ratios. Notes on every engine he'd ever opened, organized by make, model, and year. 40 years of knowledge, written by hand, in a garage that smelled like rust and gasoline. On the cover of every single notebook, circled in black ink, the same 7 words. The engine don't care who's turning the wrench. Yancey read them all, cover to cover. Then he read them again. Behind the garage, half buried in weeds and rainwater, he found a rusted 1971 Ford Mustang engine block. No manual, no teacher, no internet fast enough to stream video. Just Curtis's notebooks and 2 hands growing into the same shape as his grandfather's. He spent 2 years on that engine, every day after school, every weekend. He learned by doing, pulling apart, putting back, listening to how the pieces talk to each other. A connecting rod has a sound when it's seated right, a different sound when it's wrong. Most people can't hear the difference. Yancey could. By 15, the Mustang engine ran, clean and strong. Neighbors heard it from 3 blocks away. A 68-year-old woman named Mrs. Tate brought her Buick the next day. "Curtis's grandson," she said. "Fix my car." He did. By 18, Yancey had rebuilt 43 engines. Lawnmowers, motorcycles, sedans, trucks, a boat motor, and 1 antique tractor a farmer drove down from Kankakee because somebody told him about the kid on 63rd Street. He taught himself robotics, too. Free courses from MIT OpenCourseWare on a refurbished laptop Dorothy bought for Christmas. Actuators, servo motors, kinematic chains, control systems. He understood machines the way some people understand music, not just the theory, but the feel. He applied to 3 engineering programs, got into 2, could afford none. Financial aid covered tuition but not rent, not food, not Dorothy's medication. He stayed home, kept fixing engines, kept learning. By 26, he had the knowledge of a graduate-level mechanical engineer, the instincts of a 40-year veteran, and a resume that said high school diploma. He applied to Caldwell Dynamics because they were the best, because they worked on machines that made his hands itch, because Curtis Lawson's motto still echoed every time he picked up a wrench. The engine don't care who's turning the wrench. It meant something simple. Mechanical truth doesn't negotiate. An engine runs or it doesn't. No money changes thermodynamics. No degree makes a cracked bearing whole. No last name fixes a fractured mount. The work speaks. Always. Yancey never argued with insults, never raised his voice, never explained himself to people who had already decided he was nothing. He answered the only way Curtis taught him, with results. A neighbor said a 15-year-old couldn't rebuild a transmission. He rebuilt it in a weekend. A shop owner said he was too young. Yancey fixed the car the shop couldn't. And now a billionaire had told him he couldn't fix a Ferrari. 72 hours. The clock was ticking. He walked into the Caldwell Dynamics atrium at 6 the next morning. The building was empty. The Ferrari sat under halogen lights, silent as a cathedral. Yancey set his tool bag down, unzipped it, pulled out a small brass hammer, worn smooth, the handle wrapped in electrical tape Curtis had put there 30 years ago. He opened the hood and got to work. The atrium looked different at 6 in the morning. No string quartet, No champagne. No laughter. Just Yancey Lawson, a tool bag, and a $52 million car under white halogen light. He didn't touch the engine. Not yet. He walked around the car, slowly, one full circle, then another. His eyes traced the body lines, the panel gaps, the way the hood sat a fraction higher on the left side. Most people would never notice. Yancey noticed. He crouched beside the left rear wheel, placed his palm flat against the body panel, closed his eyes, and stayed there, perfectly still, like a man listening to a confession only metal could whisper. By 7:15, engineers started arriving. By 7:30, word had spread through every floor. By 8, the mezzanine above the atrium was packed. Engineers, technicians, staff, interns, all pressed against the glass railing, looking down like spectators in a coliseum. Sloane arrived at 8:20. She went straight to the mezzanine's VIP lounge. Glass walls, leather chairs, a perfect overhead view. Vivian Cross was already there, phone on a tripod, live stream running. "We're live," Vivian said. 12,000 viewers and climbing. Sloane sat down, crossed her legs, sipped her coffee. She looked down at Yancey the way a cat watches a mouse it has already decided to kill. "How long before he cries?" she asked. Vivian laughed. 2 hours, maybe less. Sloane posted to her 8 million followers. "My janitor thinks he can fix a $52 million Ferrari. Grab popcorn." Garrett Nolan positioned himself at the front railing, arms crossed, jaw clenched. He had spent 4 weeks failing to fix this car. Every diagnostic came back inconclusive. Every part he replaced changed nothing. If Yancey succeeded, Garrett's career was finished. His reputation would collapse in front of the entire company. If Yancey failed, and Garrett needed him to fail, desperately, then the natural order would hold, and nobody would question his competence again. "This is painful to watch," Garrett announced, loud enough for the crowd. "Somebody stop him before he scratches the paint." Laughter rippled across the mezzanine. A few engineers clapped. Down below, Yancey didn't look up, not once. He stood, walked to his tool bag, pulled out a small brass hammer, worn smooth from decades of use, the handle wrapped in old electrical tape that Curtis had put there 30 years ago. He began tapping the engine block. Light, precise taps. Not random, methodical. Front to back, cylinder by cylinder, tapping 3 times, pausing, listening, moving on. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. Listen. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. Listen. The crowd exchanged confused glances. Someone whispered, "What the hell is he doing?" Garrett cupped his hands. "Hey, you need a yoga mat down there? Maybe some incense?" More laughter. Sloane smiled behind her coffee. Vivian zoomed in on Yancey's face, steady, focused, completely unaffected, and typed beneath the stream. "He's literally just tapping a hammer, Lamau." 38,000 viewers now. Yancey didn't hear them, or didn't care. He was listening to something else. A language beneath the laughter, beneath the contempt, beneath the polished marble. The language of metal under stress. Curtis taught him this. Notebook number 4, page 11. A healthy engine resonates clean. A sick engine has a second voice, a shadow frequency hiding behind the primary tone. Find the shadow, and you find the sickness. 45 minutes. Yancey tapped and listened for 45 straight minutes. The crowd grew restless. People checked phones, drifted away, came back. Sloane ordered a second coffee. Vivian filed her nails. Garrett's jokes got weaker each time, and nobody laughed at the last one. Then Yancey stopped. His hand froze over cylinder 5. His head tilted, sharp, sudden, like a dog catching a sound no one else could hear. He tapped again, listened. Once more. There it was, a shadow frequency, faint, almost invisible. A secondary harmonic that shouldn't exist, not from the cylinder itself, but from somewhere below, from the mount. He set the hammer down, pulled an automotive stethoscope from his bag, the kind with a metal probe instead of a chest piece, pressed it firmly against the left rear engine mount, closed his eyes. His lips moved. No sound. One word mouthed to himself. There. He straightened up. For the first time in 45 minutes, he looked at the mezzanine. Not at Sloane, not at Garrett, not at the whispering crowd. He looked at Darnell Brooks, standing alone in the far corner, arms tight against his chest. Yancey nodded, just once. Darnell's eyes widened. He'd seen that look before, on a man who knew exactly what cards he was holding. At 9:52 a.m., a woman walked into the lobby. No appointment, no announcement. Charcoal blazer, flat shoes, silver-rimmed glasses, white hair, posture like steel. Eleanor Voss, 64 years old, 38 years in the automotive industry. She started as the only woman in a Detroit engine lab in 1988. By 2005, she led the diagnostic engineering division at one of the big three automakers. She developed the resonance mapping protocols that Ford, GM, and Stellantis still use today. She retired in 2019 and became chair of the National Automotive Heritage Council, the body that certified and preserved historically significant American vehicles. Her opinion didn't just carry weight, it carried gravity. She was in Austin for the Southwest Automotive Heritage Conference. That morning, a colleague forwarded her the live stream with one message. You need to see this. She watched 6 minutes, saw a young black man tapping an engine block with a brass hammer and pressing a stethoscope to the mounts. She recognized the technique immediately. Resonance mapping, old school, the kind of diagnostic intuition that couldn't be taught in any classroom, only passed down, hand to hand, ear to ear. She closed her laptop, called a cab, walked into Caldwell Dynamics without asking a single person for permission. The receptionist tried to stop her. Ma'am, do you have I'm Eleanor Voss. I don't need an appointment. The receptionist went pale and reached for the phone with shaking fingers. Upstairs, Sloane got the message and nearly choked. Eleanor Voss, the single most respected name in American automotive diagnostics, was downstairs in her lobby, watching her janitor play with a hammer. Sloane smoothed her dress and headed for the elevator. But Eleanor wasn't coming upstairs. She walked straight to the atrium floor, past the velvet ropes, past the security guard who opened his mouth and thought better of it. She stopped 10 feet from the Ferrari, folded her arms, and watched. Yancey didn't notice her. He was on the stethoscope, moving the probe millimeter by millimeter along the mount surface, mapping the fracture pattern by sound alone. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. Not skepticism, recognition. Sloane appeared beside her, slightly breathless. Ms. Voss, what an honor. I apologize you have to witness this. Our maintenance worker seems to think he's an engineer. Eleanor didn't look at her. Her eyes stayed on Yancey's hands. Your maintenance worker is performing a resonance diagnostic that 99% of certified engineers don't know exists. She paused. I'd be quiet and watch if I were you. Sloane's smile vanished. The live stream hit 110,000 viewers, and Yancey kept listening. Yancey stood up from the stethoscope and faced the crowd on the mezzanine. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The atrium's marble acoustics carried every word straight up to the glass railing, where 60 people stood watching in silence. The engine is fine, he said. Silence. Total silence. Garrett Nolan leaned forward. What did you just say? The engine is fine. There is nothing wrong with the valves, the pistons, the fuel system, or the ignition wiring. Every specialist who touched this car was solving the wrong problem. Garrett's face flushed dark red. That is absurd. The misfire is clearly an internal. The misfire is caused by the left rear engine mount. Yancey pointed at a small rubber and metal bracket bolted beneath the block. There's a hairline fracture in this bushing, invisible to the naked eye, doesn't show on any standard diagnostic scanner. He picked up a cigarette paper, tissue thin, nearly weightless, from his tool bag. He placed it gently between the fractured mount and the chassis rail beneath. Then he started the engine. The Ferrari coughed to life. Rough, unsteady. The idle was ragged, like a heartbeat with an extra beat that shouldn't be there. Watch the paper, Yancey said. On the left rear mount, the cigarette paper vibrated violently, trembling, fluttering, dancing against the metal. On the other three mounts, identical papers sat perfectly still. The contrast was undeniable. When the engine runs below 4,000 revolutions per minute, the vibration is small enough that the ignition system compensates, Yancey explained calmly. Above 4,000, the fractured mount allows the block to shift laterally by less than a millimeter. That shift creates a harmonic resonance that pushes the distributor rotor out of alignment by 0.3 degrees. Just enough to misfire. Just enough to kill your power. He paused. Let it land. Everyone was looking inside the engine. But the engine isn't broken. It's sitting on a broken chair. You don't fix the person sitting in the chair. You fix the chair. Nobody laughed. Nobody spoke. The cigarette paper on the fractured mount kept trembling like a tiny white flag of surrender. Eleanor Voss, standing 10 feet away, nodded. A single, slow nod. The kind that carried more weight than any round of applause ever could. Garrett opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Even if, and I'm not saying you're right, even if the mount is cracked, where exactly are you going to find a replacement? That bushing was hand-fabricated by Bizzarini's team in Maranello in 1962. It hasn't been manufactured in over 60 years. There is no replacement part anywhere on this earth. He said it like a verdict. Case closed. Go home. Yancey looked at Garrett for exactly 2 seconds. Then he looked past him, at the hallway leading to the Caldwell Dynamics fabrication wing. You have a 5-axis CNC mill in Bay 12, Yancey said quietly. I'll make the part myself. Garrett laughed. It came out high and thin and desperate. You'll make it? You, a level 1 tech who is hired to sweep floors, you're going to machine a precision component for a $52 million car? Yes, sir. The crowd parted as Yancey walked through the corridor toward the fabrication wing. A few engineers followed out of curiosity. Then a few more. By the time he reached Bay 12, almost 40 people trailed behind him, like a slow-moving parade nobody planned. He removed the 3 surviving original mount bushings from the car and brought them to the CNC bay. He measured each one with a micrometer caliper, recording dimensions by hand on graph paper with a pencil stub. No computer-aided design software, no engineering program, just numbers, written small and precise, exactly the way Curtis Lawson had written them in 17 spiral notebooks on 63rd Street. He calculated the thermal expansion differential between the original magnesium alloy and the aircraft-grade aluminum billet he selected from the materials rack. The original bushings would expand at 24.8 micrometers per meter per degree Celsius. Aluminum expanded at 23.1, a difference of 1.7. small enough to be irrelevant to most engineers, critical enough to matter in a 62-year-old Italian racing engine screaming at 8,000 revolutions per minute. Yancey adjusted his dimensions accordingly. He programmed the CNC machine by hand, inputting coordinates one axis at a time. His fingers moved across the control panel with the same calm precision he had used on the stethoscope an hour earlier. Then he did something that made Eleanor Voss step forward for the first time. He programmed the bushing to be deliberately oversized by 0.004 of an inch. Garrett, watching over his shoulder, jumped on it immediately. "Your tolerances are off. That bushing is too large. It won't seat properly." "It's not too large," Yancey said, without turning around. The original Bizzarini bushings were intentionally oversized by 3 to 5 thousandths. They were designed to be hand-fitted, pressed in and then filed to final tolerance by the mechanic during installation. That's how the Italians built them in 1962. If you machine it to exact spec, it'll run loose. The car will vibrate at high RPM, and you'll be right back where you started. Garrett said nothing. His jaw worked back and forth silently. Eleanor spoke from behind them both. "Where did you learn about Bizzarini's fitting tolerances?" Yancey kept his eyes on the CNC screen. "My grandfather's notebooks. He worked on Italian engines at a shop in Chicago in the 60s. He documented every single engine he ever touched." "Your grandfather's name?" "Curtis Lawson." Eleanor went still. Her hand drifted slowly to her chin. "Curtis Lawson from the South Side? I read about his work in a monograph on independent mechanics of the post-war era. He was considered the finest pair of hands in the entire Midwest." Yancey's jaw tightened. Not from anger, from something far deeper. Something he had carried alone for 20 years without anyone in this world ever confirming it out loud. "Yes, ma'am," he was. The CNC machine hummed to life. Aluminum shavings curled away from the billet like silver ribbons. 40 minutes later, Yancey held the finished bushing up to the light. He turned it slowly in his fingers, feeling for any imperfection the eye couldn't catch. Then he carried it back to the Ferrari. He pressed the new bushing into the left rear mount with a hydraulic press, hand filing the last 0.002 with a diamond file until the fit was exact. Snug. No play, no rattle. He torqued the bolts to factory specification, 62 foot-pounds, verified twice with a calibrated wrench. Then he started the engine. The Ferrari idled smooth, steady, clean. The ragged heartbeat was gone. The shadow frequency had vanished completely. Yancey revved past 4,000, past 5, past 6. No misfire, no hesitation. Nothing but clean, unbroken power. He was about to step back when his hand brushed the exhaust header on cylinder 3. He stopped. His fingers lingered on the pipe for 2 seconds, then moved to cylinder 4. Back to 3. 4 again. 3. Cylinder 3's header was cooler. Not by much, maybe 15 degrees Fahrenheit. Imperceptible to anyone who hadn't spent 15 years reading hot metal with bare fingertips. Yancey killed the engine, pulled the air cleaner off the carburetors. The 250 GTO ran 6 twin-choke Weber carburetors, 12 throats feeding 12 intake ports. He leaned in and peered into the throat feeding cylinder 3. A blockage. Tiny. A fragment of gasket material no bigger than a grain of rice, wedged deep in the fuel jet, restricting fuel flow, creating a lean condition that would cause gradual overheating under sustained high-speed driving. Yancey fished it out with a fine steel wire, held it up to the light for every person in that room to see. "This is a piece of intake manifold gasket," he said. "It broke loose during a previous repair attempt. One of your 3 European specialists left this fragment inside the carburetor. If this car had been driven at speed on any open road, Cylinder 3 would have overheated within 20 minutes. The piston could have seized. At $52 million, that's not a repair bill. That's a funeral. Dead silence. Someone on the mezzanine whispered, "Oh my God." Yancey cleaned the jet, rebalanced all 6 carburetors by ear, adjusting each idle mixture screw in quarter-turn increments, listening for the exact point where every cylinder's exhaust note blended into one single unified tone. Then he stepped back. He pressed the ignition one final time. The V12 came alive. Not the coughing, stumbling idle from before. A sound like 12 cellos playing one perfect note in absolute unison. Clean, balanced, alive. He pushed the throttle. 4,000, 5, 6, 7, 8,000 revolutions per minute. The sound filled the entire atrium like thunder rolling through a cathedral. Glass panels on the mezzanine hummed in sympathy. The marble floor vibrated beneath 200 feet. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Eleanor Voss stepped forward. She looked directly at the crowd and spoke loud enough for the live stream microphones to capture every single syllable. 3 specialists, 6 weeks, $250,000 in consulting fees. Not one of them found what this young man found in 18 hours with a stethoscope and a brass hammer. She paused and let the silence hold. I have been in this industry for 38 years. I know excellence when I hear it. And I just heard it. The atrium erupted. Engineers who had been laughing 12 hours ago were on their feet now. Darnell Brooks stood in the far corner with tears running silently down his face and made no move to wipe them away. Sloane Caldwell sat alone in the VIP lounge above. Her champagne glass was untouched. Her phone screen was dark. Her face held an expression that 2 million live stream viewers would screenshot and share 10,000 times before midnight. It was the face of a woman who had just realized, far too late, that she had been laughing at the wrong person. Sloane refused to accept it. Not yet. Not like this. Not in front of 2 million strangers. A lobby demonstration proves nothing, she said, her voice tight. I want a track test. Full speed. Full load. If that engine holds at 8,000 RPM through turn 12 at Kata, then we'll talk about whether your little parlor trick actually worked. She said it like a woman setting one last trap. But the trap had no teeth, and everyone in the paddock knew it. She knew it too. By 2 o'clock, the Ferrari sat on a flatbed, heading south on Interstate 35 toward the Circuit of the Americas, the same track where Formula One cars screamed through 20 turns at 200 miles per hour. Sloane had used the facility for client events and glossy photo shoots. Never for anything like this. The paddock filled quickly. Engineers drove out on their lunch breaks and lined the pit wall. The live stream swelled past 1 million. Vivian Cross, who had spent the morning mocking Yancey with captions and emojis, now filmed with the quiet focus of someone who sensed the story had changed direction permanently. Garrett sat in the driver's seat. His hands trembled on the wheel. He had never pushed this car past 100. The engine had never let him. Yancey sat in the passenger seat. Eleanor had insisted. The mechanic who performed the repair rides along to monitor the engine under load. Standard diagnostic protocol. Non-negotiable. Sloane stood behind the pit wall with her arms crossed and her jaw locked. The engine started clean. Garrett rolled onto the main straight. First gear. Second. Third. The V12 climbed through the rev range like a voice finding its true note after years of forced silence. 4,000 RPM. Smooth. 5,000. Perfect. 6,000 through turn 1. The car rotated like it was on rails. No vibration. No hesitation. No misfire. 7,000 down the back straight. The exhaust note sharpened into something primal. A sound that hadn't come from this engine in 6 months. A sound that belonged on the Mulsanne Straight at Le Mans in 1962, not on a Texas racetrack. 8,000 through turn 12. Decreasing radius left-hander, the corner that punished any mechanical weakness with centrifugal fury. The car held. Every cylinder fired in perfect sequence. Every mount held firm. Every carburetor delivering fuel with the precision of a Swiss watch. Yancey sat with his eyes closed. Not from fear. He was listening. His right hand rested on the transmission tunnel, reading vibrations through his fingertips the way a doctor reads a pulse through skin. Clean, balanced, alive. He opened his eyes. One small smile. The first real smile anyone at Caldwell Dynamics had ever seen on his face. 5 full laps. Every telemetry readout confirmed what his ears already knew. The engine produced 2% more horsepower than its original 1962 dyno sheet. His carburetor rebalancing had optimized the fuel mixture beyond factory specifications. The car was running better now than the day it left Maranello 62 years ago. Eleanor reviewed the data in the paddock. She pulled letterhead from her briefcase, National Automotive Heritage Council, and wrote a verification statement by hand, signed it, dated it, handed it directly to Sloan. This letter certifies that the repair is among the most elegant diagnostic solutions I have witnessed in 4 decades of engineering, Eleanor said quietly. Frame it. You will want to. Sloan took the letter with unsteady fingers. The live stream counter read 2.1 million viewers. Sloan stood in front of Yancey in the paddock. No crowd between them now. No mezzanine above. No champagne glass to hide behind. Just 2 people and a truth that could no longer be outrun. I said I'd marry you. Her voice was quiet, stripped of every sharp edge it had carried for weeks. Yancey looked at her, steady, unhurried, the same unshakable calm he had carried since the moment he first walked into her building. And I said, I accept. But I don't need a wife who offered herself as a punchline. He paused. I didn't need your ring. I didn't need your name. I needed you to see me. And now you do. He turned and walked toward the pit exit. Darnell Brooks fell into step beside him without a word. Neither of them looked back. Behind them, 2.1 million people watched Sloan Caldwell stand completely alone in a paddock, with a letter in one hand and absolutely nothing left to say. If you think that is where this story ends, you don't know Yancey Lawson. What happened to Sloan Caldwell in the next 30 days was something even her best lawyers couldn't fix. Drop a comment right now. What would you have said to her standing in that paddock? And if you are still here, hit that subscribe button. You are going to want to see what comes next. Eleanor Voss called Yancey that evening. No small talk, no preamble. I want you on my team, she said. The National Automotive Heritage Council needs a consulting diagnostic specialist. Someone who can evaluate and restore historically significant vehicles across the country. The position is based on demonstrated competence, no degree required. Yancey was silent for a long time. What's the catch? No catch. You showed me something I haven't seen in decades. I'm not letting that walk out the door. He sat on the edge of his bed that night, turning his grandfather's brass hammer in his hands. He accepted the next morning. The live stream footage, all 2.1 million views of it, did not stay on Sloan Caldwell's Instagram. It spread. Automotive forums picked it up first, then enthusiast YouTube channels, then mainstream media. Within 72 hours, Yancey Lawson's name appeared in 2 major publications. One called him The most gifted independent diagnostic mind to emerge in a generation. The other simply ran the headline, "The engine don't care." A restoration shop in Monterey, California, one of the 3 most prestigious in the world, reached out with a partnership offer. A documentary filmmaker in Los Angeles requested an interview. An engineering podcast with 400,000 subscribers asked him to appear as a guest. Yancey said yes to Eleanor. He'd think about the rest. Back at Caldwell Dynamics, 4 senior engineers approached him privately before his last day. Each one apologized. One admitted he had known the Mount theory was plausible, but stayed silent because Garrett would have buried him. Another offered to write a letter of recommendation so detailed it rammed 3 pages. Harlan Foster, the silver-haired board member who had embarrassed Sloan about the Ferrari at the cocktail party, found Yancey in the parking lot on his final afternoon. "Son, you didn't just fix a car," Foster said. "You exposed a culture, and cultures don't fix themselves." He handed Yancey his business card. "The board is going to have questions for Ms. Caldwell. I'd like you available to answer some of them." Yancey gave his 2 weeks' notice. Professional, clean, no victory speech, no parting shots. He shook Garrett Nolan's hand on the way out. Garrett couldn't meet his eyes. The internet has a long memory, and Sloan Caldwell had handed it every receipt it would ever need. Her own live stream, the one Vivian Cross set up to humiliate a mechanic in coveralls, became the single most damaging piece of evidence against her own company. Every insult was on camera. Every sneer was time-stamped. Every cruel laugh was archived permanently. The hashtags wrote themselves. Hashtag #FixMyFerrari trended for 3 days. Hashtag #EnginesDon'tCare trended for 5. The board of directors moved faster than anyone expected. Harlan Foster and 2 independent board members launched a formal investigation into workplace culture within 1 week of the footage going viral. They hired an outside firm. The findings arrived in a 46-page report that read like a horror story dressed in corporate language. 14 employees had been hired through the Workforce Diversity Initiative in 3 years. 13 resigned within 6 months. Exit interviews, buried by HR, documented a pattern so consistent it could have been scripted. Racial slurs spoken on the engineering floor. Assignments designed to humiliate. Tools and equipment withheld from minority employees. Systematic exclusion from technical projects, training, and team meetings. One former employee described Caldwell Dynamics as the most professionally hostile environment I have experienced in 20 years of engineering. Garrett Nolan was the first to fall. The investigation uncovered $85,000 in parts and labor billed for Ferrari repairs that were either unnecessary or incorrectly performed. Components replaced that showed no signs of failure. Diagnostic hours logged for tests that were never run. Invoices submitted for parts still sitting unopened on warehouse shelves. The board terminated him for financial misconduct and falsification of maintenance records. The Texas Board of Professional Engineers opened a separate inquiry into his license. 2 former clients filed civil claims for work performed under his supervision. His attorney released a single sentence: Mr. Nolan disputes the characterization of his work. He has not cleared his name. Vivian Cross was terminated the same week. Her unauthorized live stream had violated internal communications policy, exposed proprietary footage to millions without consent, and created significant legal liability. She deleted all social media accounts within 48 hours of her dismissal. Sloan Caldwell was not fired. As majority shareholder, she could not be removed from ownership. But the board stripped every ounce of operational authority from her hands. They appointed an independent CEO, Audrey Collins, a 15-year veteran of automotive manufacturing, with a reputation for rebuilding broken corporate cultures from the ground up. Sloan retained her title. She lost everything that came with it: hiring decisions, engineering oversight, culture policy, client relationships. Collins implemented blind resume hiring within her first month. 2 major clients, a European racing syndicate and a private collector with 11 vehicles under Caldwell management, withdrew their contracts, citing reputational concerns. 3 weeks after the live stream, Sloan posted a video to her Instagram. Not the polished, filtered content her 8 million followers were used to. No makeup, no ring light, no rehearsed script. She sat in her living room, eyes red, voice cracking twice. She said she had used a man as a punchline. She said she was raised to believe that people who looked like Yancey Lawson belonged beneath her. She said watching him work had shattered something fundamental inside her understanding of the world. She donated $100,000 to a scholarship fund for underprivileged students pursuing mechanical engineering. The video received 12 million views in its first week. The top comment, with 94,000 likes, read simply, "The engine don't care who's turning the wrench. Neither should you." Yancey never commented on it. He never needed to. 6 months later, Pebble Beach, Monterey, California, the most prestigious classic car event on Earth. Yancey Lawson walked the judging field in a clean jacket, National Automotive Heritage Council emblem on the breast pocket, his grandfather's brass hammer hanging from his belt. A black girl, maybe 10, watched him press a stethoscope to an engine block. She tugged her mother's sleeve. "Mama, I want to do that." Yancey heard her. He knelt down, held out the stethoscope. "Listen, the engine will tell you everything you need to know." Curtis Lawson wrote it on every notebook in that Chicago garage. The engine don't care who's turning the wrench. Yancey Lawson proved it. Not with words, with his hands. If this story reminded you of someone who was underestimated, share it with them. What's your engine? Tell me in the comments below. Subscribe so you don't miss the next story. Hashtag engines don't care. Hashtag fix my Ferrari.
Here's what I want you to walk away with. The work doesn't lie. It never has. A boat doesn't care who tightened it. A problem doesn't care who sold it. Results don't check the resume. Your degree or the color of the skin. Results are right or wrong, done or not done. That's it. So, if someone tells you that you are not qualified, show them. Don't argue, don't explain, don't waste your breath trying to convince the people who already made up their minds. Just do the work. Let your hands break. Let the result shut every mouth in the room. And if you're the one looking down at someone right now, someone who think can't possibly know what they know, someone who doesn't look the part, be careful, because the person you are laughing at might be the only one in the room who can solve the problem you've been failing at for months. And when they do, your laugh is going to itch real bad. Like, share and subscribe with stories with justice every week. And remember, the work doesn't care who does it. It only cares that it's done right. So let people work and get out of the way.